Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to this episode of the Real Wealth Solutions podcast, along with my co-host, Greg Scully. I am Darren Light. Today, we are honored to be joined by Chad Sutton from Quattro Capital. And we just want to start off with Chad, if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes to introduce yourself, tell us about your background, how you got into multifamily real estate, and where you are today, and then we'll get into some more specific questions.
Yeah, that's a dangerous thing, guys, asking a Southern guy to just start talking, but
Hold my beer.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Let's start with the weather and
Yeah. We're in Tennessee, so if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes and it'll change. But anyway, no, thanks for having me, guys. It's an honor to be on the podcast and an honor to be talking here next to a couple of legends in our circles. So, thanks for having me here. But
thanks in a minute.
Yeah. So Chad Sutton, I am a recovering engineer. We'll get into that. I am one of the managing partners of Quattro Capital, specifically with responsibility over our acquisitions pipeline and, vetting the investment opportunities we bring to market. The recovering engineer part, y'all, I followed the corporate dream for a long time. I mean, I was raised in a working class family. I watched my parents not finish college before having kids. And I watched them then go try to do that while having kids and jobs. And that was fun. So the one lesson I learned was get it done right the first time so you don't have to do that. And so that was always my goal, is to get to, get into a good college, make good grades, get a good job. I was always pretty numbers and technically inclined, if you will. So the world told me I needed to be an engineer. So I became an engineer and, followed that path and decided I wanted to try to become CEO of a Fortune 50 company. And I followed that path for a little while. And actually within 10 years of my career, went from being a design engineer in aviation, putting together pieces of aircraft engine builds and things like that for General Electric. I worked for NASA for a little while when we still had a space program. Did some pretty cool and pretty nerdy things, for a while as an engineer. And then that got me into you remember when GE stock price plummeted, right? We established an internal consulting team, kind of like a McKinsey and Deloitte or a KPMG. And I traveled around the world on their dollar. It really shrank my world, seeing, getting to touch, East Asia, Scandinavia, Europe. I've been everywhere, man. Specifically going to factories and figuring out, like, how do we improve the bottom line? How do we increase variable cost productivity and really, just figure out how to do things better. So that's where I started to get my P&L experience and my business savvy and understanding, like, how do I improve the operations of a company at the Fortune 50 level, all while traveling around and skiing with my buddies in the Swiss Alps and stuff like that. Right. So it was a tough life. Then had my first child and decided traveling around the world, 52 weeks out of the year was not fun. And started looking for ways out. That led to a supply chain executive role, which is where my corporate career eventually ended when I stepped into this full time. Look at the other path that I had here. My family had been in single family real estate as long as I can remember. It was just what granddad did. I didn't know anything about it. He got into it later in life and was figuring it out. So he wasn't quite convinced that it was what he wanted his grandkids to do. But after he passed away in 2016, this is kind of where the paths start running parallel. My now business partner, and by the way, 3 of my business partners are family. That's something we can touch on. My mother and her sister, my aunt, both brilliant individuals. They stepped in and started running the family, single family portfolio. And that is where, we discovered that, okay, the business that had been thriving was starting to decline a little bit. I think, granddad had gotten sicker and wasn't really paying the attention that he used to it. We fired a property management company who was embezzling. We wound up, they wound up taking that company to, I think about a 40% value and profit increase within 12 months. So it was like, okay, the light bulb just went off. This is how real estate works. How do we do this better? Right. So then this is around the time I was getting involved in real estate investing. I bought this house as a live-in flip, created $250,000 in equity within 12 months on a $50,000 investment into the property. That's when my light bulb went off, and we started combining forces and figuring out where we wanted to go from there. And guys, education, we went to every, seminar, boot camp, whatever we could find around the country, and learned as many of the common denominators people were teaching about, what is multifamily and why is it better than single family, bought a couple of deals. That's where we met our partners with Quattro Capital. And then after buying 3 or 4 deals together as a team, we formalized and have been knocking them down ever since, learned to use private capital. And now we're starting to use institutional money because, you start to get to a point where it doesn't make sense to keep raising from $50,000 investors at $5 million, right? So that was a big story, but that's how I got from a little working class kid to where I am today.
So you touched on the fact that you guys took down a couple of multifamily deals actually before Quattro was formed. So
that's right.
Is that with your
technically Quattro existed, but it wasn't the publicity front, right? It was
okay.
That's another funny story.
Was Quattro part of your single family that came along, or some other people together? Or tell us more, I guess, how Quattro got formed. And
so on a technicality, Quattro Capital, the LLC, it came into existence when we bought our first multifamily property, and that was just because we had 4 people that decided to do a joint venture, and we called it Quattro Capital. So put that to the side. But we at the time, my mother was still in the single family business. Kim and I, Kim is Tammy's sister, my aunt, we had formed Next Gen Real Capital and had gone out to market trying to put together multifamily deals. So that's where that name came from. It still exists, but it's now Next Gen is a joint venture partner of Quattro. We then met Aaron Hudson and Maurice Philogene, who are 2 of our very experienced and high energy partners who have been in this for like 18 years. And we took down that first deal together. That we came together and formed Quattro Capital just as a one-off business relationship for that deal. Well, one deal led to another and then to another. And about 4 deals in, we said, look, why are we confusing people with different email domains and trying to act as a company, but not being one? So that's when we hired a business coach named Trevor McGregor. And we actually decided to become a private equity company, not just a group of real estate investors. Right. And so that's when we just happened to already have that entity. That's when Quattro Capital became the leading front of how we're organizing as a management asset management company. And of course, we had to then rebuild what Quattro meant, because it no longer meant 4 people. Because while we are Quattro, we have 5 people, so that doesn't really work very well. But we actually established our core ideals of people first, property second, profits third, and then philanthropy. And you can go into those 4 things and really read about what our ideals are in this business. But at the end of the day, you're in the people business. You're not in the real estate business, right? Whether Absolutely. It's relationships with your colleagues, with other sponsors, with your investors, or even just with your customer, the resident, right? So
I do like your 4 pillars. I've seen that on the website before. It may even be on your email signature. What have you found that since you've sort of changed what Quattro Capital is and it's become a private equity company, just that phrase alone, and whether that's tagged in social media, your website, truly talking about that, is it easier to raise capital that way? I mean, it sounds like a silly question, but have you found you're attracting money easier?
Well, I think when we talk about it's not really described that way on the website. We do still look like a real estate company, which is what we are, but you have to have the mindset of you're in the relationship business, and B, you're in the private equity business, right? Because you can find all the deals you want, but if you're only going to go as fast as the equity that you have. And yes, when we talk that way, and our coach is really good at pushing this, Trevor McGregor, it's like you need to play at the level 10 steps ahead where you want to be, like where you want to be 10 years from now. Go look at your competition when you're 10 years from now, not your competition today. And that's what made us do things like, we have a very tight, tightly controlled investor portal that is a seamless experience. You can't tell if you're investing with us or you're investing with like Greystone. Like it looks good. It looks very professional, and it's a seamless investor experience. Like things like that it costs a little money, but you got to level up and you got to really play to the level you want to be 10 years from now, not where you are today. And so, yes, doing things like that. And treating ourselves like a very established private equity company, even though we're really a boutique firm, right? We're not,
Sure.
we're not a gray star. I said Greystone, gray star.
Right.
And we'll never will be. I don't want to be that, but we are a high touch concierge private equity firm. And I think that's what, it does help the money flow a little bit. Yeah.
One thing that's resonated with Greg and I just the last couple of weeks, or both of us, but me in particular, is we've talked to several different groups, and you touched on, look at what someone's doing to where you want to be 10 years down the road. That's what you need to be doing. Yeah. But that also goes along with systems. You need to build and create your systems you don't want to have to be scaling your system every 1 to 3 years. You want those systems and processes to be able to accommodate what your goals are for the next 10 years.
Preach, brother, preach.
Yes. Yeah, just things like that. I'm like, God, perfect sense. Spend the money now.
You have to, and it's like, and you're going to evolve your systems. But what I'll tell you is, and I've seen this happen to several groups. I won't name names, but they were great when they were small. They got some traction. They didn't properly scale with systems and processes, and they're imploding right now, just because they can't keep up with what they have going on. And so, yeah, you have to kind of be peering around corner, and it's hard to do. It's hard to justify spending money before you think you have it, because you got to look at it as an investment to get to the next revenue level, not an expense with what you have today, right? So there are times where you're going to find yourself with that question of, man, I need to do this, but can I afford to do this? And I feel like I'm a hypocrite because I'm guilty of this, right? Sure. It's like, I need to spend this money to get to that revenue level, but do we really have it yet? And so, but it's that, having that confidence of when you put that system in place, knowing that it is revenue generating and it will bring you to the next level of revenue and pay for itself, multiple times over. So you have to look at investing in your business just as much as you do investing in a property and generating returns that way,
yeah,
which is harder to underwrite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I was just thinking, we do talk about that a lot, getting your CPA, getting your attorney, getting the infrastructure of what you need to run the business in place and pay for it and be happy about it. So then when you need it, it's already there. You're not scrambling to fill a seat. I think something that we're trying to work on is the other part of it that you talked about, and that you do very well is also projecting the other side of that, of what you want to accomplish as a business, and acting as if you're already the $100 million private equity, assets under management type firm. So rarely do I see both happening. And speaking for ourselves, that's something that we're currently working on is upping our game on the basically the marketing side. It just gets lumped into marketing as far as I'm concerned, is how you project yourself to the potential market.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, we can talk about that for a second. Marketing in general is so important. And it's not like in our business, it's not what you typically think of, like airing commercials. You could do that if you're doing, certain types of offerings. But for us, we defiantly committed ourselves as individuals to social media this year. And that is not like big branded posts, but it is, we personally post because we all have a big following, right? It's growing. We all personally post every single day. And for every third post, there's something about the company in there. And then there's 2 personal posts. You have to mix in that because that way you grow organically on social media. But we found that we were doing all this cool stuff, and we were reaching out via osmosis effectively to different people who were learning about us, but we weren't talking about it. We weren't putting it out there. Like for example, you guys saw at one of our apartments in Knoxville, we just built because I think Darren commented on it. Yep. We just built a nice pergola. And so I was like, well, why don't we share our thought process of why we did that? Like, it's not an advertisement of, hey, come invest in my deal. It's just, hey, let me challenge your thinking for a second. Look, most people look at this as an expense. We're looking at it as an investment because I'm spending $10,000 here trying to avoid $60,000 in unit turnover, right? Absolutely. So it's like you start sharing thoughts like that, and that's marketing. Like that's what people are like. Oh yeah, wow, this guy knows what. This is interesting, and that's pretty. I mean, it's a pretty picture. Let me call him. And so you get traction off of that kind of stuff, and you start growing organically. But So we had to defiantly commit to that this year. But
one of my goals for 2021 is to put myself out there more. And as you know,
it's nerve-wracking.
I love connecting with people anyway. So I think, and Greg and I have talked about this as a company as well. And one of my favorite, I'm going to butcher it, but Gary Vee talks about authenticity and vulnerability is one of the most underrated currencies in the world. And so I love you are your brand. You can preach Quattro Capital all day long, but you 4 or 5 people are the Quattro brand. Greg Scully and I are the Real Wealth Solutions brand. So the more we're putting ourselves out there and we're showing examples of what you're talking about, you're doing to your complex or what your family's doing or whatever, and being real.
People want to know you.
They want to know you. That's what draws people in. I totally agree with that. That's awesome.
And they want to know your failures too. They don't just want to know rah, 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 look how good I am. They want to know, well, we didn't do this right. Look what we learned. You know, I mean,
I think the first event you came to, a live one, you heard about my failures. So that resonates with people.
Yeah, and we've all got them.
Some expert guru. Oh yeah. We've all got them. Talk about it. Yeah. For real.
I'll tell you what I have learned, because I get the question a lot. I was on a webinar about the deal in Decatur we just closed a few weeks ago with one of my equity partners in California. And I got a very strong question of what's been your biggest mistake where you probably lost money? And I was like, well, here you go. And I laid it on the table. And I mean, it was good because we showed them what happened, what was outside of our control, what was in our control, and how we fixed it. And luckily we could tell it was ending in a good story. But you know, like that builds more confidence, knowing that you navigated turmoil and came out on top than someone who doesn't have a mistake to talk about.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah, you just touched on, you very briefly said equity partner in California. So I just wanted to layer a couple of things that seems like you've done intentionally to grow. The partnerships, it's hard to do this alone. You can't fill every seat in the bus and do them all well. So you filled out the partnership with Quattro, doubling down or increasing marketing presence, social media, just getting your name out there. And then, an equity partner in California. So this is similar to what we're experiencing is, we've got some deals under our belt where you didn't come from piles of cash in duffel bags sitting in the closet. Right. Eventually you run out of your own money, or it's all tied up. Mm-hmm. So in order to get to the next step properties, we're starting to reach out to other sponsorship groups that are of similar size, so we can get, our unit count and scale and purchase price up to the next level. Is that something that you're doing actively, as well as just networking with other operators? Absolutely. As well as continuing to do the individual investor list growth?
Yeah. And guys, this is hard because, I'm a doer. Like I see problems, I solve them. And you heard I said I too many times in that sentence, right? So another challenge our coach has given us is that we read this book called Who Not How, right? I don't know if you guys have ever read it. Great book. But the biggest problem that any entrepreneur, not just real estate, the biggest problem that any entrepreneur is going to have, and this is a statistic. This is why 90% of small businesses fail, is because entrepreneurs spend more time figuring out how to get it all done than asking the question, who can help me get this done? And that is a pivotal question. And so just to your point there, that is why Quattro Capital has 5 managing partners. And we even have a few alliance partners who are not, part of Quattro Capital, but are strategically aligned and part of the Quattro influence sphere, right? So they work on our behalf. But we realized to get to the scale that we have a very lofty goal. We want 100 million in recurring revenue annually, and that is within the next 5 years. So we have a very steep curve to get there. You can't do that with 1 or 2 people raising capital, vetting deals, talking to brokers, handling financing, closing deals, running rehabs. Like you can't do that. There's not enough hours in the day. So you got to think about someone who's Thomas Edison, right? Who started General Electric. There is no way in hell that he could even know what all General Electric does today, because that company has gotten to such a large level. You have to put aces in their places along the way, sometimes before you can afford to do it, to get to the next revenue stream, right? But so that being said, that's why we have 5 managing partners. 2 of them are defiantly dedicated to private equity. That's all they do is talk, or they do other things, but that's their main responsibility, is talking to, private investors, resident investment advisors, funds, like how, that's how we build those relationships, because they take time to build. You can't just wait till you have a deal and say, hey, Graystar, can I get some money? It takes time to build that relationship. So 2 people are doing that. We have 2 people who focus solely on operations and asset management, because we had to spread that load around. and myself on acquisitions. And then to your point, you get even further along. You're like, well, you only have so much control of capital. Where are you finding your capital? Like we have people, there are people in our space in the California areas and New York and some of these areas where real estate investing just isn't really as lucrative, but money is, right? And so these guys and girls, they're very good. And that we know a girl who we met early in our career who is in the tech space, and she knows a lot of tech money, people who make a ton of money and just, they don't know where to put it. And so she built this very awesome educational platform where she has kind of been, indoctrinating all these people into it, teaching them about what she knows in this space, being very open and out there about where she's investing, where she's made mistakes and things like that. And she has this huge following of people who can drop $500,000 a deal into deals, and so we work with her and say, hey, so, Sarah, we've got this deal. And, she knows our track record, we know hers. And so we come together, we get on one of her webinars, a bunch of her, like 200 of her investors show up. And then overnight we've got $1 million, so it's like, you have to work with people like that who are cultivating their own little fish tanks in order to put these things together. Because if you're going to work at scale and you're going to go one after the other, you've got to have A, the systems to take them down, B, the systems to operate them, and C, the liquidity and net worth and capital to take them down. Right. So absolutely. This is a we game, not an I game.
So are you, I think I already know the answer. Are you using VAs, or are you handing off some of these initial looks to people kind of outside of Quattro initially, and trying to get that SEV, in place, or that filter, so that, I only want to see something when we're 65% sure it's got some legs on it. Speak to that a little bit. What things have you done to increase the deal flow, but still make it manageable for things that actually have potential?
Yeah. And this part's hard when you're starting out, because, I remember I finally built all this deal flow and I wanted to look at everything because I just didn't know what was good and what was bad. But it takes discipline. But now I'll probably get 30 leads in my inbox in a day and 28 of them get deleted immediately, just because, I don't want to go after it. But so we've used VAs and like Upwork and Fiverr type things to, not for underwriting, but for, I don't know, podcast artwork, video, like we do drone footage of our properties, video editing, like, things like that. So we definitely outsource all that work. The underwriting, I'll say I haven't been as successful putting a VA on that yet. But what we've done it a little differently. We have the concept of an alliance partnership. And so being members of all these communities, that we have around the country, there are naturally people who go through these educational programs who, 90% of them will never do anything with it. Sadly, they'll spend the money and be done. 5% of them will start to figure it out and crash and burn. And maybe 5 or, whatever's left will rise to the top and actually, really learn and understand and learn how to innovate and be a pretty valuable player. So we've been fortunate to attract some of those people, a very small few, and we created this concept of an alliance partnership. And for example, the deal we just closed in Decatur, Georgia, was brought to us by one of our alliance partners who came out of the RE Mentor Network. Very sharp girl. She is one of the best underwriters I know. She's great at building broker relationships, and she kind of has developed East Atlanta for us. And, so she's got deal flow. She vets things. I don't ever see it until we're like, okay, we actually want to go make an offer on this, and they've already had broker conversations. They visited the property and they've underwritten. So we actually don't pay them for this on like a salary type thing. They're working for equity. Right. So that's one way to get creative. And you can argue like, okay, it's probably cheaper to pay a VA in the long run, but we're also in the people business. And so it's going to cost me more when we go take that deal down, because they're going to get a share of the acquisition fee. They're going to get a share of the ongoing equity, things like that. But I now have a vested little mini me, who is learning all of our systems and processes that can actually drive the ship on that deal, pretty well without my help. So in my opinion, it's human capital, right? So absolutely, we have to leverage human capital wherever we can.
The VA cannot massage that broker relationship, nor can
No.
they be boots on the ground. Go
Well,
to a
VA
property,
is
yeah.
get it to a
transactional.
certain point to where
Right.
So
The
that
VA is
makes perfect sense.
transactional. Yeah.
There's a kind of an unseen piece to underwriting, I think, for people that can put a specific property into context of a sub-market where
Yeah.
running just the straight numbers game might not reveal everything or every potential or every drawback for somebody that, has that boots on the ground
Mhm.
knowledge of a market. So, I could see it being useful for the elimination process, but
Right. Maybe draw on down the funnel, but that's like,
mhm.
what's the saying? It doesn't take money to make money. It takes value to create money. Right. And so if you apply that saying to this situation, how do you best spot value in like the ones that pencil obviously and are awesome? There's going to be 110 people going after that deal. It's going to get bid up and it's going to get overpaid for. Right. That's just how today's market is. There's a lot of buyers, especially in a good market. But if you can go pick one out that maybe isn't as straightforward, and you have to have that savvy to figure it out and that local knowledge, and you can kind of find that diamond in the rough. You're like, oh, okay, well, it's maybe 10, there's only 5 or 6 people looking at that one because it didn't immediately pencil.
Mhm.
So
Hey, it's Greg from Real Wealth Solutions. If you'd like to know more about our passive income opportunities, jump onto realwealth.solutions and hit that schedule a call button. We're always happy to talk about our multifamily and flip projects and to answer any questions you may have. Again, that's realwealth.solutions. We look forward to hearing from you. And now, back to the podcast.
Since you touched on that one, Chad, that deal, what else might the listeners be interested
Yeah, I heard
in
there's a
knowing
good
about?
story.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to say, when you're negotiating your contracts, this is another who, not how. Pay a good attorney, because you never need that contract until something goes wrong. Okay,
We are all about that for sure.
Pay an attorney. It is the best money you will ever spend. That and a CPA. But we had a clause in our contract that we will go walk every unit the day before closing, any vacant that is, and anything that is not in rent ready condition, we will get 4,000 or 5,000, whatever, 2,500, whatever you negotiate with the seller. It's a negotiation point. You get X amount per door and a credit, and that's like, so. For example, if you walk in and a unit is trashed, they did not spend the money to turn it over. You didn't budget for it because you didn't know about it. Well, they need to give you a credit on it, right? So that was one clause we negotiated in there. So I sent my team to my property management team to the property to walk the 2 out of 110 vacant units that were there. I get a call from my regional manager, not 2 hours later. Chad, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm like, well, this is never good.
Yeah, that's a great lead-in.
And she says, well, the first vacant was clean. The second vacant, when Dawn, the manager, showed up with the maintenance guy, the door was cracked and we heard rustling inside. So we're like, oh, great, squatters. They open the door and there are 6 butt naked people having an orgy, like homeless people having an orgy in unit E3. And sadly, like, of course, my brain works a little faster than I speak sometimes. So I was running through thoughts in my head and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have they done to this unit? It's probably torn up. And the next thing out of my mouth was, well, did you get pictures? She was so offended for a second, but I was like, no, of the unit. So, but the unit was trash. Like we ran them off, boarded it up. They had broken through the window. They had kicked in the door. They had lit a fire on the drywall. It was burned in one area. They had ripped up carpet. There was just body fluids everywhere. It was gross, So that unit is trashed and now has to get completely ripped out and start over. Now we were planning on doing it anyway, right, when it turned over, but that's neither here nor there. Point is, that is a vacant unit that we now get a credit for on the HUD statement. So that was a fun call to the seller. Hey, Mr. Seller, you're never going to guess what I just found. And he, not 30 seconds later, he hung up and went and chewed the mess out of his management company, because apparently this had been going on for 2 or 3 weeks based on the damage and what the maintenance guy said. And the fact that manager hadn't handled it. Well, they were a good owner, but they own a lot of units. And so they're a little less engaged than I think we would be, So anyway, fun story, but
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with people. I mean, that's why,
it's people. Yeah, it's a messy business.
you
People are
know,
messy.
that probably wouldn't happen if you were into self-storage.
I don't know.
I mean,
You
it
might.
could, but I mean, ultimately there's a lot of people contact with this. That's
Yeah.
just,
Well, that's the point.
stuff
People
just
are messy.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like I got a call
Yeah.
from our grounds guy. He's like, "Hey, Greg, there's like 9 cops over here." I'm like, "Okay, keep me posted." I'm like, "What do I do?" I mean, I'm not gonna, let them do their job, and hopefully everything's fine. And actually, I never heard anything about it again. But
yeah, that's the thing.
That's just going to happen.
When you're dealing with renters, they're people. People's lives are messy. I bet your life's messy too, but you just can't, you just can't assume everything is going to go according to plan all the time. Greg, did your picture just move behind you, or was that just me?
I don't know. It might have.
It wasn't cockeyed before. I swear it just dipped down. Anyway,
It might have.
ADD. Sorry.
Start talking about crazy stuff.
Phone or my phone, my camera.
But that deal taught us another lesson, though. And I know we were chatting about private equity before. We have regularly, I mean, we can go raise $1 million, $1.5 million in a week. Like that part's pretty easy. And what we've learned, though, is it's really becoming like the bigger you go. This was a $9 million deal, in East Atlanta, which we were happy to buy it at that price. But when you start trying to raise $3.5, $4, $5 million out of $50,000 and $100,000 investors, like do the math. That's a lot of people, and that's a lot of people who can flake out. That's a lot of conversations you have to have over and over again. There are ways to do it. And I do know people who have big platforms and do it that way. But we really quickly realized, wow, this is tough. So we actually brought in not an equity company, a group of investors who they like to be between 25 and 50% of the raise. And, we wound up bringing them in for a chunk of the raise to get it done, and actually one thing that's contrary to popular belief, not all money is created equal, and like the investors like you and me who have maybe $100,000 to $500,000 or maybe even less and need to, we're looking for, double your money in 3 to 5 years, like big, sexy returns, right? Think about the guy who's got $10 million and he's trying to go put a little bit in a couple of deals. He doesn't want to write $100,000 checks. He wants to go write, a $3 million check or a $2 million check or more. But he's like, look, I've made this money. Like I'm more worried about keeping it growing modestly and keeping income coming in, but I don't want to lose it, So their mindset is different. When you ain't, I mean, having 1 to 500,000 is great, but it's not a lot of money in comparison, right? So you're looking to grow that because that's not going to last you very long if you just hold on to it. $10 million, if you have it modestly growing, it can last you a lifetime. So what these guys are looking for is like a pref position, not necessarily on cash flow, but when you sell the property, they want to get paid their money back first. And so even if the property went sideways, they're going to get their return and their 10 IRR first, and then everyone else can deal with whatever risk they took, right? So you find people like that, and that's how people are actually able to, like sponsors are putting together these, $50 million Class A deals and still showing it as a 25 IRR for an investor. The only way you can do that when you're paying a 4 cap or a high 3 cap for it is you have a big bucket of cheap money and a small bucket of expensive money, to fill it out. Because those big guys will write, 50% to 75% of the equity, and they only want like a 10 IRR. And then your rest of the investors, let's say the extra 2 million, they're going to want, that 25 IRR. But now that you don't have to give as much upside to the big chunk, you can piece that upside off over to them. And so, we've really learned that deal structure is just as much of an art as underwriting when putting these things together.
That's a very interesting point, because one of the things Greg and I have talked about and tried to make as a point of emphasis, and one thing that he and has educated me on that's really good for, I don't know if this is another bucket of investors. You kind of touched on 2 different ones, and it might be one and the same for a couple of them. But when you've got a return, like we like to buy this latest one we're working on in Wichita, it's going to be almost even as far as cash flow and proceeds at the end of sale.
Good.
So, and he brought that to my attention one day. I was like, wow, that's just just hadn't thought about it that way, because it's either usually one or the other, but not both. So you kind of touched on the two others that may or may not like a part of that as well. So, if you're only on appreciation play, like you say, the lower IRR, that's a great point.
It's different goals. I mean, I just mentioned one way to structure it. I mean, another way I've seen people do it is like they only raise from, investors like us, but the way they do their cheap money and expensive money, if you will, they have like a 25% of the equity will be for Class A investors. And they get a 9 pref on cash flow and no upside. But it's like if you want cash flow and you want to get paid first, you want as little risk as possible, you're going to get 9% of that Class A building, right? Then the Class B investors you get a 7 pref, but it's not guaranteed. It's like if it's not available, it's not available. But you would then get the next 7% of cash flow available, but then you share in the upside. And then the sponsors, they have a residual split of whatever's left. They're more of a fee-based sponsor. But the point is, they're able to offer, a better return to those Class B investors, because the Class A investors are only, when you look at it, a 9% and nothing else, they're only getting a 9% return on the deal, that period, the end, right? So it's like when you start, and I've seen people try to do this with 3 and 4 different tranches, and it kind of gets a little wonky there. Like you can make any deal work with that. So I wouldn't play that game, but you can really make, deals very appealing to different types of investors by just having a dual tranche equity structure.
Yeah, I think the deal model you just described is for sure one that Dan Hanford uses.
It is. That's exactly who I was thinking of. Yeah.
I saw one of his recently on paper because someone sent it to me, and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. So.
Well, and that goes back to like some people think, people are overpaying, and there may be something to that in a very general statement. But you made the point that people have different expectations for what they need their money to do, and they're like, I can buy at this cap rate and get my return, and I'm happy. Because that doesn't work for you doesn't necessarily mean that they overpaid. They're assuming they underwrote a way that will work out in the end. They're accomplishing their goal. So
let's talk about that though. So what is overpaying? Because just like you said, everyone has a different color of money and a color of reality. Like everyone has a different perception. And so like, let's say that we're both looking at a $10 million deal in Atlanta, right? And we both underwrite it to where it's going to have a 7% cash on cash return, and it's going to require $3 million to take down and do whatever work we need to do. Right. Well, if I've got $3 million in the bank, I just sold a business. Let's say I just sold an insurance company and I've got proceeds, and I'm a little savvy. So I know I'm going to put it in real estate and get some tax benefits and some income. I might be happy as a clam to go pay 10 million 3 and deploy my $3 million and get a 7% return and pay myself, what I need to retire. And I'm happy as a clam, and that thing's appreciating in a good market. Well, you as a syndicator probably wouldn't like that very much, because you're probably going to top out at, 9 or 9.5 or something, because what you're trying to do is keep, 20-30% for yourself to pay yourself for running the asset, but also carve out enough to go pay investors with how much they expect and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, I would say, me, the syndicator, would say you, the buyer, overpaid by that for almost $1 million. Well, he doesn't think you overpaid because he's happy with it. He still sees it as an appreciating asset. Cap rates are still compressing. He's probably still going to sell it and make a profit, So what is overpaying? It's hard to.
Yeah. I mean, I consider overpaying a component of general underwriting, because those two deals, you would have to know the assumptions that they put into on rent growth and a rehab plan, and how many unit turns they're expecting to do in a certain amount of time, and their exit cap rate. And, there's a whole bunch that goes into whether or not that projection is met. So I think a lot of the overpaying is done on how things are being underwritten.
Yeah.
And maybe being a little, unicornish.
It is a real thing. there are people that overpay. And so like, if you're like, I know to get into Huntsville right now, like the way my underwriting has been going, you've basically got to give 1 to 2 years to the seller for free and just assume you're just breaking even, and then you start to take off. Right? That's what it costs to get it.
Yeah.
At least with my models, that's what it costs. So to me, that's overpaying. Maybe to someone else who's a speculator, it's not. So there's this range of, what the property's really worth based on how you're looking at it, I think,
Yeah, it's a very individual decision. Yeah.
Let's talk about how you guys got into the Knoxville market. What maybe relationships propelled you to open that door there? How that's going?
Yeah.
Why you like it? We own property in Knoxville as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just touch on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I really like that market. So one reason I bleed orange. I'm a volunteer. I went to college there, even though, we could have a whole podcast on the status of our football team, but I'm still loyal. When we were looking to get in, I evaluated Nashville, Knoxville, and Chattanooga because they were close to me, and Tennessee is a very good rental. It's landlord friendly. And at the time, still now, job growth was very proud. We had a lot of good things coming into the state. So it made sense to invest in my backyard. So I started looking at inventory. And inventory in Nashville so back up. We wanted to buy some smaller property ourselves and just prove can we do this before we start taking $1 million from someone else promising a return, right? So we looked at inventory, and at Chattanooga at the time, a lot of the inventory had changed hands within the last 18 months. So we're like, okay, we could go in there, but it's already pretty hot, and it's high growth, but there's a lot of new owners there already. So we still look there. We haven't been, I actually just blew one up in Chattanooga yesterday. We'll talk about that. But Nashville, when you look at the product that's available, you either have there's a few 12 to 20 unit buildings, not many at all, that are around the city. And then you have 250 plus, just big new builds, and Nashville had national attention. So if you didn't already have clout, we weren't really going to, we were like, well, this is going to be difficult. Then you go to Knoxville, and Knoxville's not a high growth market, but it's a very steady growth market. It has been, it's always been a steady, even the last 2 recessions we've had, it's grown, including the most recent one. And when I looked at certain areas of town, I was like, okay, there's a lot of 10 to 60 unit buildings that are owned by mom and pop owners, and they're well-built brick buildings. They're older, but they're built like a tank. They're just tired, And so we saw that as an opportunity to go and say, most people are trying to ride the crotch rocket. They're trying to buy the 200 unit, 1000cc Kawasaki Ninja, right? And go post on Facebook. They have that. We decided to stay under the radar of institutional money and big, larger investors. And we figured, well, if we can go buy 3 or 4 of these little buildings and buy them close to each other, we can set up an office on one and still run it with the scale of a 100 unit building where you can have your own payroll and such. And so that's what we did. We leveraged broker. I haven't had any luck direct to seller, by the way. In the spirit of who, not how, I pay brokers to go do their job and turn over deals, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to spend my time writing letters and stuff, but.
Right.
So we used a broker with Marcus and Millichap who specializes in small deals. Y'all probably know him. And, he brought us Castle Terrace, which was, that was our first acquisition in the Tennessee multifamily space. And that was a 35 unit deal. We bought it from some people, who were also good operators, and they took it as far as they wanted to, and they decided to get out, and we've been done very well with it since then. And that's meat on the bone, right? Those guys bought it from the first generation owner who'd owned it for 30 years, took rents from 500 to 700, in a product that we've been able to take from 700 to 900 within a year. So it's that product was so far below, they went and made their money well, I'll just get out and go do something else and let someone else finish it. Right. So we recapitalized and did that. And then we just kept picking off, from old generational owners, these buildings that were, tired. They hadn't been renovated since the 70s, but they had good bones, and we've been, putting new cabinets, new LVP, repost gray paint.
It's
And,
exactly our color.
That's the color. It's the color. And it Repo's gray.
I think I know why though. Yeah, it just hit me. Yeah.
Yeah, Repo's gray. And they look great. And these things were renting at on average of the smaller ones were renting on average of like $550, and we're renting them at $800, and people are lining up for them. So I love Knoxville. It's a high growth market in terms of rent right now. I mean, I think prior 12-month rent growth through the pandemic, like when you look back in like August or I think it was October numbers from Moody's report, what was it like? The market average was like 5.5%, 6%, something like that through the pandemic. So
yeah,
collections
are very good. We at our
very good.
At our 52 unit that we closed on February 28th last year, we went from 700 to 895 day one.
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
Yeah, and that gives you some. You talking about the overpaying thing, right? I mean, I've won some deals in Knoxville because I paid a little more, but I'm confident in what I can go do because I have property there. So it's like, yeah, I'll pay a little more, but I know for a fact I'm going to get this rent. You think you're going to get this rent, Yeah.
And that speaks to sometimes people miss out. They get so hung up on cap rate going in and price per door that they don't see the inefficiency with which it's being ran and missing their opportunity.
It matters.
They can operate it.
It matters, but it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And the gurus, which this is important. I mean, if you're gonna buy, I don't ever say don't buy on pro forma, but if you're gonna buy on pro forma, make sure you're buying on a pro forma that you're going to achieve, right? And that doesn't mean pay what it's going to be then. That means maybe you have to pay, you pay what they think it's worth right now and give them a little credit, but then you still got all this upside over here that you're going to go put a deal. Whereas if you just looked at it like, well, this isn't a 7 cap rate, I'm not going to buy it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Right. So cap rate matters, but it's only as good as the seller's financials are,
Yeah, totally agree. Let's move on to mindset a little bit. As you alluded to before we actually started recording, and I've seen on social media, you're doing this 75-day hard challenge. I guess number one, if you want to share quickly what that is and why you chose to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 75 hard challenge, actually a friend of mine, Hunter Jones in Knoxville, gave me this book. Also,
Hunter's looking good too, man.
Yeah.
I saw him last night.
Yeah, he's sharp. He looks good. But he, he handed me this book and said, I just finished doing this. You ought to do it. And so it sat on my shelf over there with all those other books for a few months. And then my partner at the end of December was like, hey, I'm going to do the 75 hard challenge. You want to do it with me? And let's do it on social media. And we have like a Facebook group and everything going, or like a messenger group for accountability. And I'd kind of fallen off the wagon a little bit. I was, I have problems with snacking too much. And I was like working out when I had time. Like the problem is I will work myself to death. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm hungry. And I'll go to the kitchen and pound whatever I can find and come right back in here 10 minutes later. It's not a good thing. So the whole idea about this challenge, it is about fitness, but it's about mental toughness more than anything. And when I was kind of studying, what is it going to take to get to the next level from where we are today? One thing all these people have in common is mental toughness, right? That they don't listen to, the detractor voices of saying, well, you can't do this because of this. It's like, no, that's what I'm going to do and watch me do it. It's that mental toughness of knowing whatever comes your way, you're going to accomplish it. And the whole idea behind this challenge is it's 75 days is a long time. And that's what, 2.5 months, right? There are no skip days. There are no cheat days. If you are on day 74 and you miss one of the tasks, you start over. That's it. So the emotional capital of copping out, right? It gets so much greater the further you get into the challenge. And so it helps build your resilience of I am not stopping. And so what you have to do twice a day, which is why I'm in workout clothes right now, twice a day, you have to work out for 45 minutes a day. And one of them must be outside no matter what the weather is. So if it's 32 degrees, I've been outside, I put on my ski stuff and went outside and did a Fit Factory workout in 28-degree weather. Like it can be done. But the whole idea behind that is the toughest part about, making yourself do whatever it is you're trying to do is putting your shoes on, right? For working out, for example. But once you're actually doing it, it's not that bad, And so there's the workout part. There's drinking a gallon of water a day, which is tough for someone of my stature. You have to drink a gallon of water every day. You have to abstain from alcohol for 75 days. You have to follow a diet or sustenance budget, if you will, of your choice for 75 days. You have to take a progress picture every day for 75 days. And this part I love more than that. You have to read 10 pages of a business, entrepreneurial, or personal development book every day for 75 days. So that's another thing that most people will do that are very successful is they're always reading, books. Success leaves clues. There is a garage full of books that can, teach you how to be successful in real estate. You don't have to go pay for $100,000 coaching program if you don't want to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole idea is your success comes from repetitive monotony. It does not come from like the Rocky video where it's like you see Rocky Balboa jump rope faster than anybody else in the first part of the 2-minute song. And then he runs up the hill and fist pumps. And then he gets in the ring and knocks out the Russian, like that's Hollywood, right? His success story was in 2 minutes and it had awesome music playing behind you. I'm here to tell you,
life is not a montage.
No, success in life is not a montage. There is no awesome song playing behind me, no journey, right? And it is monotony. Like there are small repetitive tasks you must do every single day without question to get where you are going. And that's what this challenge is all about, the mental toughness aspect.
I love the phrase embracing the process.
Yeah.
And I think
embrace the process. Yeah.
I've considered doing that challenge. I know a lot of people that have done it. But I'm all about the mindset of what we're doing today, whether it's business or personal.
Yeah.
And you can never, you're always improving or trying to improve. So
you are.
And what's been fun for me, especially in multifamily real estate, is just the top-notch level people that I've met, along the way and along the journey, and just realizing that, man, you can't do it alone. So it's just great always finding someone else that has the same mindset and goals.
Yeah. And life comes at you fast, guys. I mean, you start out, they actually gave a little timeline in the book I read about this of what your emotional mindset is going to be through this. And coming out of the gate, you feel like a king. You're 2 weeks in, you've worked out for, 28 times, you've eaten right, you drank your water, read your books, everything's great. And then something tough happens in life and you have to still keep doing all this. And then you're on week 7, you're like, oh my gosh, do I have to go outside in the 30-degree weather and run again?
Just imagine if you have to travel.
Yeah. There you go. I had to go close a deal on Tuesday of last week. We left for Atlanta from Nashville Tuesday morning at 4 a.m., went down there, handled everything, had lunch with the broker. We wound up doing an 1.5-hour workout between that and when we went to the property to take over because we knew we'd have to drive home after that. Now we could have stayed in a hotel, but we didn't. So yeah, I mean, you have to, it makes you budget your time capital better, like how do I make sure I get all this in?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it's a great feeling because when you're done, you're just like, well, look how much I got done.
Yeah.
So, when you're faced with a challenge and you've gone through something that you survived and realized that, it was okay. Once you have that in your back pocket of experience that,
right.
You've done something tough and survived and you're better for it. It's like, oh, well,
exactly.
This won't be that bad.
Whatever that is,
whatever that is.
Yeah.
It can make future challenges seem less challenging.
That's right.
By contrast.
Real quick, I just want to go back and then we can close out with whatever. How did you guys decide, hey, we need a business coach? And then how did you choose Trevor McGregor that you sort of alluded to? How did you vet that out?
Well, so I think it was pretty early in our real estate career. We actually did, we did one of the well-known coaching programs in the country, and our thought process on it was, look, we're about to be playing with a lot of money here. Mm-hmm. You can look at this as a cost, or you can look at this as all these people have made the mistakes I'm trying not to make. Let me go learn them so I don't repeat them. Right. And you're still like, I'm going to tell you, no matter how much you learn, you're going to make some mistakes that you want to do better next time. Right. And we've made not crush your business mistakes, right? But we've made something, oh, wow, we don't need to put our money in on the GP side of when we put money in, we need to buy shares of the LP side because we got into a situation where our money was worth less than the investors, So it's like you don't realize that, and it sounds like a good idea at the time. But there are jugular mistakes that if you don't seek education, you probably will stumble into because you don't know what you don't know, especially in something where something like this where vetting an asset is the biggest due diligence you can do. Right. And so, our first coaching program that we went through went through RE Mentor was actually, it saved us from making about $8 million in mistakes, just in the first 2 months. So, looking, and that the most dangerous position you can be in is when you have money and you're ignorant, so that was, when you don't have money, it's easier because you then have to go sell an investor on why you should, no one's going to give you money if they don't believe in the deal or the team. But when you have money to drop and you don't know what you don't know, that's a dangerous spot to be in. So that was kind of what got us to invest in coaching in general. But then, fast forward, now that we know the value of coaching, we've realized that, we don't know what we don't know. And in order to get to the next level, we have to ask who can help us get there. And Trevor McGregor, he's actually, for a while, he was Tony Robbins' top performing coach, I think for about 10 years, focusing in real estate. And so actually some big names you would know have been coached by Trevor McGregor, the Joe Fairless conglomerate, the, passiveinvesting.com, Danny Hanford, Danny Randazzo, those guys, Brandon Abbott, they're coached by Trevor McGregor. Wildhorn Capital in Texas was coached by Trevor McGregor. So like all these, we started to see all these big name groups and we're like, oh, okay. Because we started to see some similarities in how they move and operate. Now, he's not a real estate coach. He's not going to teach you how to buy real estate, right? Mm-hmm. But what he can teach you how to do, it's huge on mindset, because mindset is so essential when you're going through these trenches, right? So he's big on mindset. He's big on, the whole idea behind skill set, heart set, soul set, mindset. But then it's also behind, like, how do you get out of your own way and grow from where you are to where you need to be? And specifically, he has experience watching, private equity syndication groups grow from A to B, right? And so, we chose to hire him based on, he just has firsthand experience with the type of business we're trying to grow and can help us not go down certain rabbit holes at times, to get where we're trying to go.
That's great.
Yeah. He's not cheap, but he's worth it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, it goes back to what you said. You pay for it in house so it can help you grow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an investment. And, do I think we'd be where we are today if we hadn't hired him? I don't. We've abated certain pitfalls. We've all improved in mindset as a unit and as individuals tremendously. And we've accomplished more. Just for example, we did a webinar on our deal indicator. We thought we did very well, and that's how we had done our webinars in the past. Coach ripped us apart about that. And the reason was he was comparing us to the Joe Fairlesses, the Dan Hanford, people like that. And so like that opened our world to, wow, we need to be using more drone footage. We need to be showing less of a slide deck and more persona. And like there was just different ways that you don't think about doing things because you haven't seen it,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
If you don't have the cash available to get a Trevor McGregor, any advice on somebody with less means to seek out the same effects? What comes to my mind is just look at Trevor McGregor. He probably has some media out there where he's dropping nuggets that you can implement, read books, or, get on Fairless's investor list or Hanford's list, and just like see what people are doing that you want to emulate and copy them.
Right. That's the hardest part, Greg, is when you're early in whatever it is you're trying to build and you don't have a lot of capital, right? It's easy for me to say, oh, we're spending money before we had it. What if you don't even have money to spend yet? Right. So podcasts, listen to these people on podcasts. We have so much, audio capital in whatever topic you want to listen to, this included, right? That you can go through and really start to be able to talk the talk a little bit. And yes, if you can't afford personalized coaching, there are group coaching sessions that are done, and you pay a lot less for that. It's not customized, but you're still getting the same type of capital, that's put into you from a mindset perspective. Go on their websites. I mean, they have, free value add material that they put out there. They are on podcasts, so like if you want to learn, like hear kind of about what Trevor McGregor would advise you from a 10,000 foot view, go look for Trevor McGregor. Just search Trevor McGregor on podcasts, and you'll find him. I mean, he's been on hundreds, so yeah, I would say, you got to get scrappy in the beginning and bootstrap a little bit, but, take advantage of the library of books that are out there on these topics. Take advantage of the podcast, take advantage of the free material. And then as you start to have success, remember not to bleed your business dry. Reinvest back into yourself as much as you can, because you're going to grow faster,
That's
Yeah.
great.
That's a great spot, I think, to drop it there. That was some pretty solid advice at the end. You can go figure it out slowly. And then as you get more resources, deploy them.
Yeah.
And get the ROI on it that way. So yeah, let everybody know, Chad, how to get a hold of you, how to get a hold of Quattro, see what you guys are up to. Maybe interested in, getting onto your deal list for future opportunities. Where do they find Chad Sutton and Quattro?
It's pretty easy. So, and I'm sure these guys can put this in the show notes for you, but go to thequattroway.com. And I'll spell that out for you guys, but that is our main website domain, and you can find how to contact us. You can find how to get on our investor list, create a login on the investor portal, see the assets we've taken down, link to podcasts we've been on. It's really a one-stop shop. So just remember thequattroway.com, and that's it.
Awesome.
Right on. Well, yeah, thank you all for joining us again. Real Wealth Solutions Podcast. I am Greg Scully. And for Darren Light, or I guess you can do your own salutation, Darren.
No, it's been great, Chad. We really appreciate you coming on. Love everything, man. The mindset especially. And look forward to seeing you guys just do bigger and better things this time moving forward.
Likewise. Sounds like we may need to partner on something here soon as well. So
yeah, we've chatted about that for a while. So
hopefully we can see each other in person as well before
yes,
too long. So all right. Yep. Thank you. We'll see y'all later.